All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope you're all doing well tonight. We are going to actually look into finishing up the standard UI tonight. There we go. I was waiting on Vim to refresh there. So the goal tonight is to finish up the text box, as well as really just kind of tie up a couple of things in our standard UI system for now, so that we can kind of move on to a different feature, right? Because we spent a lot of time in the standard UI. We still have stuff to add to it, but I feel like the system is kind of somewhat stable now, and it's at a place where we can kind of move on to adding some other features. So that's kind of what's on the roster for tonight. For those of you who are new here, this is a stream where we develop a game engine completely from scratch. Now on stream, it started off as a YouTube video series. It was kind of in tutorial format at first, and I changed the format a few times over on YouTube, and it eventually just kind of, through experimentation and trying different stuff, we wound up live streaming the dev here. So the engine is called the Kohi game engine, and we have written it in C from scratch, and we use Vulkan as our rendering backend at the moment. And I say at the moment because we eventually are going to support multiple rendering backends. So Vulkan is the one we support for now, but we're also going to be adding support for OpenGL, DirectX, and Metal, right? And so KohiEngine.com, I'll go ahead and drop a link here in both YouTube and Twitch chat. KohiEngine.com is sort of the main portal for all things Kohi. So you can get the links to the YouTube channel, the Twitch channel, as well as the Discord, GitHub, all that good stuff, right? There's also a live stream here at the bottom, right? So I can kind of see myself in stream and wave at myself and all that. So we have all of that. The other thing I do want to mention is this game engine is 100% open source and 100% free. It is Apache 2.0 licensed, so that means that you're free to use the code however you want. All I ask is that you credit me. So there will never be any charge for this engine. There will never be any sort of royalties or anything like that. Nothing whatsoever, right? Any support financially from this engine comes purely from Patreon supporters, Twitch supporters, or YouTube, or one of those things, right? So I don't have any sponsors or anything like that. So support purely comes from you guys. So with that in mind, I do want to take a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel. Starting with the partners. So that is the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. And they are Aerslia and Grabullies Inc. I'd also like to thank all the other supporters listed here on the screen. This is a combination of the other tiers of support over on Patreon and YouTube memberships, as well as Twitch subscribers. So thank you guys very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. All funds that I get from this channel get reinvested back into the channel. And so that definitely helps the channel grow. It allows me to buy newer, better equipment to improve the quality of the videos, or in one case, I was able to save up the money for a long time to be able to actually get a Mac to port to, so that we could actually port this to the Mac OS, right? So, with all of that out of the way, I do want to point out that this is an interactive stream, so everything that we're doing here, if you guys have any questions along the way, or any things you'd like to talk about, as long as they're, sort of kind of related to what we're doing here on the channel, feel free to jump into chat, and that goes for the folks on YouTube and the folks on the Twitch side. We are simulcasting, so we are broadcasting to both places at once. I do have both chats up here, and I do keep an eye on those things, so yeah. Okay, so last time where we left off was we were kind of trying to figure out the cursor position and scrolling the text back and forth as we move the caret beyond the bounds of where the clipping area is for the text box. And I went ahead and I actually, this wouldn't escape my brain overnight, so I actually went ahead and fixed it, right? And I wasn't too far off at all, right? But we do have a number of changes here that I want to quickly just kind of go over. And I'm actually going to use VS Code to do this because I think it's probably going to be the cleanest, right? So let me just close all of these things, and I'm just going to kind of step through this real quick, right? So we'll take a look at the changelog first, because that's what makes the most sense, I think, because this kind of details all the changes that I've made so far. Let me close some of these terminals here. All right, so these are the things that basically have been done. Some of these were actually completed in a previous video, or the previous stream, but I want to go ahead and mention them here anyway. So this is the dynamic state feature stuff that we handled the last stream, and all of the simplification that we did around that, around the Vulkan extension for dynamic state. All that stuff has been added to the changelog. I also did extensive updates to the README file. So I added build instructions and prerequisites in there, as well as a lot more information that you'll need to actually get up and running with the engine. So we've added that. I also fixed a few things in the VS Code configuration. We were actually missing some paths in our C++ configuration that was causing some squigglies. So I've gone ahead and updated that. And I performed various tweaks to the debug console to make it look and act nicer, right? In addition, I also kind of completed the Textbox implementation for navigation, but that's not really a separate feature, so I haven't included it here, right? But we'll go over it. Smudge, good evening. Good to have you here. How are you doing tonight? Welcome to the stream. I hope you are doing well. So, the README, I'm actually not going to, I'm not going to look at that here, in the working tree, actually. I want to just open it up by itself, and, maybe with a preview here, just to, let's see, I know it was in here somewhere. Open timeline, where is it? Isn't there an open preview? There it is, it's at the top. All right, so, our new README kind of looks like a little bit like this, right? We've added the Kohi logo. We added a new sort of updated screenshot. I kind of moved some controls around to make it look a little bit better. And so we've got our social links in here, Discord link on here, website links as for some of our resources. I updated the plan a little bit just to kind of bring it up to date with where we are in the project. And then we've got this whole prerequisites section. So we've got for Windows, Linux, and Mac. I think these are complete. I'll have to do a little bit more research on this, but a lot of the questions I was getting around this were based around Windows. So that one I definitely know is complete. Right down to how we get Make to work on Windows, right? What Visual Studio community version you need to have installed, and then of course Git, right? And so there's that, and then the cross-platform prerequisites. These are the prerequisites you have to have across the board. So we need Clang 13+, so you can download that here, and then of course the Vulkan SDK. We also have the audio plugin prerequisites. This already kind of existed before, but I added the Windows portion of that. And then to get started, I basically put in here how to clone the repo, and then a little blurb in here about you can use other compilers, but you know you're going to need to be responsible for the setup of that if you want to do that. And then let's see, a little bit further here down, we have the building. So this section didn't exist before. And so we have a description here. We have two build types available, debug and release, which we already kind of knew, but now it's on the README, it's official. And it talks about what those different ones are, and it says there's also a clean available. And then we have instructions on how to build for Windows and how to build for Linux and Mac OS. And then in terms of running the actual application, we have a little bit of information here about setting the working directory to bin and then running from there, right? If you don't do that, it won't work. I also added some stuff here about the project structure, right? So what all these different folders are and what they do and what they mean. So there's a little bit here. Eventually I want to add a graphic, but we've got a few more of these things to add. So I don't want to recreate the graphic too many times, so I'm not going to do that yet. I did perform some small updates to this little mini roadmap on here. I probably should have included a link to the actual roadmap, but I'm probably going to wind up updating that as well to something a little bit different, right? And then I think the rest of this is mostly the same. I revamped this support me section down here as well, right? Smudge, you're doing well. Thrilled that I actually got my new contact lenses out super easily today for the first time. Oof. I mean, contact lenses are... I tried them once, never again, right? Well. VS Code. Yes. I'm using that because I need to preview the README, right? Because I don't have it checked in. And so I just figured it was a decent representation of that. But yes, go ahead and hit me with the ban hammer coffee. Banned for using that which shall not be named. Weird Trash Can, hello. How are you doing? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, that is basically the changes that we made there. And then with that, also, we've added a number of images alongside that README update, right? So that's what a lot of this stuff is. So the VS Code configuration updates are in here for those of you guys that are using this. So that's up to date now. We updated the Atlas, right? So we have a small update here. This was semi-transparent black before. Now it's white, and we actually tint it in code. And then this is sort of the raw XCF or the GIMP file for that. Version, we can skip over that. We did a small bug fix in console. We just trim this particular string right here, which is for this error message, because by the time it actually gets to this point, there would be a new line potentially attached to this. And it was kind of screwing up our visual console within the engine to have that new line there. So we've gone ahead and added a trim there to resolve that. Our debug console received a few small updates. Again, a string trim here if we have an error. And if you recall before, for high priority error messages, we don't bother splitting like new lines. We don't split the string at all. Just because if there happens to be a memory error, that operation will actually fail, right? And so in this case, we go ahead and trim that string instead. A little bit further down, we performed a few tweaks on positioning and width and height of some things, just to make the debug console look a little bit better. We took the label position set, and since this was kind of very generic, right, it just kind of set the transform that exists on the base object itself. We actually made that part of the base system, right? So all controls can actually use this now. There's the header update for that. The label control received a few small updates. One is that it's actually using the typed data color that's passed into it instead of just white, right? So we can now color our text, and we removed that, right? And here's the header update for that. Panel received a small update as well, just to take in the color as one of its creation parameters, so that we can color panels differently during creation, right? So we have that, and then we also have the use here of that color in the render data. And here's the header update for that. The text box is where we had the most changes, and I'm probably going to actually step through that code, the new version of that versus showing the diff, because the diff is kind of hard to pick apart here. And so we were able to knock off a couple things off our to-do list here, right? So we now have the ability to scroll left and right in overflow cases on the text box, and we'll demo that here in a minute. And then we also have the navigation of the text box caret, including jump to home and end, right? So we have all that standard text box functionality implemented with these changes. In the UI pass, we basically took this section and just moved it down to here so that it's applied after the stencil is done. And then we move the sync of the frame buffer down to the bottom. No big deal there. And then the only change we made in here was to take this particular label here, and we moved it further down so that it actually gets created on top of this panel, right? So we just move that there, right? The rest of these updates are just positional and minor tweaks just to kind of make things look a little nicer. And then we moved, this SUI label position to SUI control position set, right? And that is most of the updates. The only one that I want to additionally show off is the text box updates itself, right? So let me just catch up on chat real quick. So let's see. Oh, I didn't realize VS Code could preview Markdown. Yet another reason for the best code editor. Fight me. It is not the best code editor. I used to think that until I actually switched over to Vim. I like Vim way more. For actual editing stuff, I use Vim. I really only use this other one for debugging, just because I'm not used to the other ones yet. I need to use them for a couple months before I do it on stream, right? And diffs are pretty easy to view in this, right? Because you can do this, right? But it's a little harder to parse, right? For smaller change sets, this is great, and I actually prefer this, but for large change sets, it's a little bit harder to follow. Yeah, just friendly banter, yes. I use it on Linux, but now, since I'm only doing things on Windows, I'm using Visual Studio Community. Judge me. I mean, I used Visual Studio Community for a lot of years, and then I switched to VS Code. And, I used that for a number of years, too, until I kind of saw how quickly people were able to work in Vim and navigate, right? And I was just like, I need to buckle down and learn how to use that. And I finally did. And I finally played around with the setup long enough to actually become familiar and comfortable with it as my primary editor. So I use this every day now as my primary editor, both for my personal stuff and my work stuff. And it's awesome. It's still in my mind that I got baited into thinking that you're Canadian because you type color. Yeah, no. That's because I worked for a number of years on a code base that was based out of South Africa, which uses British English, right? And so I picked up a lot of mannerisms from that, and my spelling of things, and I just kind of got used to it. Yeah, and I just kind of stuck with it. Holy, that's based. What did I say that was base G? Base G? I assume you meant based, but maybe base G. Is that a term us boomers aren't aware of? I'm certainly judging you for Visual Studio. Yeah, I don't use full-blown Visual Studio anymore. I have no reason to use it. Unless... I mean, the memory view in it is pretty decent. That would be the only thing I would probably use it for these days. You're a C# fan. Yeah. But even C# you don't have to use that, right? You can use the compiler on the command line if you really want to. I've given up with fighting compilers on Windows and all that stuff. So, I mean, like, while I kind of get it, I also don't, because, like, the setup that I have here works on 3 different platforms, right? And I can use the same set of commands on those 3 platforms, and it just works. Because Clang just basically translates to Visual Studio, on the back end. So it still, ultimately goes through that compiler for Windows, but I could still use the same, like, sets of options and stuff. Although if you want to do things on C with Visual Studio, better to use anything else. That's probably true. I've never actually attempted to write C in Visual Studio. I've always written C++ in Visual Studio, but it's been... I think the last version of Visual Studio that I actually used was maybe 2017. And I think that was for C# stuff. So, it tries to make C feel like C++. Ooh, gross. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. The other thing I don't like about it is they try to force you to use, like, their non-standard versions of things. you know, like the underscore versions of the C library functions, stuff like that. Not a fan of that. You can get around it, but not a fan. All right, so I want to walk through this logic here that we were kind of struggling with last night, and just kind of go over the final version of it, right? And so this was mostly correct, right? So we have this calculate cursor offset. It takes in the string position, the full string, and then the font data. And obviously, if the string position is 0, we don't need to do any of this, right? If we're at the very first character of the string, we have no offset, so we can just return 0. So that was fine. So the next thing we do is we sort of duplicate this string to give us a buffer that's at least the size of the string that we're going to be trimming, right? And then we take the original length of that just in case we need it, which we actually do down here to free that string. And then we do a mid operation, right? And we feed into this particular buffer, right? And then we say, take the full string, start at position 0, and trim to string position, right? So we just get the substring there. And then we go ahead and call font system measure string. And we say, use this font and use this substring, right? Which is the mid target here. So we do that, and then we get the vector2 size for that. So this particular measure string does both axes, right? A lot of APIs will just give you the width or the length of the string, right? Which is useless in multi-line scenarios, right? We're not doing multi-line right now, but we are going to do multi-line, so why not support it while I'm in there, right? And so the size you get here is a vector2. We just need the x component of that here. So we just return size.x, right? So the update cursor position was mostly correct last night, but I performed some simplification and cleanup. And so what we've done is we go ahead and we get the cursor offset and set the padding just like we did before. The cursor position this time is taken, the X is taken by offset plus the text view offset. So if the text box has already been scrolled, we take that into account, right? The cursor position Y is now at 6. I think it was at 2. And so we've just kind of bumped that down a little bit, just as sort of a little visual update, right? And again, this should probably be configurable. So we should probably pass that in or something, right? So I'll mark that as a to-do. And then we want to ensure the cursor is within the bounds of the text box. So what we were trying to do last night was take the padding into account when we were actually doing that calculation. But there's really no reason to do that. We can apply the padding after and shift based on that padding after we've done this calculation, which simplifies all of this, right? And so we get the clip width, which is just the X size of the entire control, right? And then minus the padding on both sides, right? So we take the padding out of the equation, and that's our clip box width, right? Our clip X min, we are going to take the padding into account, right? In the clip X max, we are going to say clip X min and clip width, right? So these two do take padding into account, but we don't use them right away. And so basically what we do is we take this clip width is what we're actually going to be using. So if we are moving to the right, we say if the new cursor the would-be cursor position is outside of the clip width, right, or it's greater than that, then we take the diff between what that cursor position is and the clip width. No padding is considered here, right? And then we set the cursor position right up against the max edge, right? Which we were already doing last night. We had that part right. So we don't take the padding into account here. That's the big difference. The else case is if we're moving to the left, right? So if our cursor position is less than 0, meaning that we're trying to actually move over to the right, or to the left rather, then what we do is we say, okay, the diff is actually 0 minus cursor position, right? Which we could technically just make this negative, but this I feel like makes it a little bit clearer, right? And then we set the cursor position to clip X min, which jams the cursor against the left side of the text box, right? Otherwise, if we're not doing either one of those things, then we take padding into account, right? So we say cursor position X plus equals padding, right? So we've already calculated the cursor position X here. We just take the padding into account, right? We save off the view offset. So the view offset becomes whatever diff we use, right? So this one or this one, or in the case of us being within those clip bounds, right? We're not exceeding the left or the right bounds. We just use this 0 value, right? And then we translate the label backward or forward depending on what we're actually doing. And we do that by, first off, grabbing a copy of the label position. And then here is where we actually add the padding back in, right? So we say padding plus the offset, right? And by waiting to do the padding here, we simplify all of this, right? And we can use largely the same code for both directions with a few caveats, right? And so we go ahead and we set the position there, and then we translate the cursor to its new position, which is the same as last night, right? And so that is the bulk of the change that's in there. Additionally, we also, let me find it. We also changed the panel creation for the cursor to be all white, so it's a little bit easier to see because it was kind of semi-transparent and black before. So now we can kind of see that a lot better. And then down here, there was a couple changes we made as well. Let's see. In the on key. So in the on key, we made a few changes as well. We removed our to-dos, right? Because all of this stuff was correct. We just didn't have what we actually needed. Let me clear these highlights. So we just didn't have this working correctly, right? So now it is working correctly. Key left and key right was already created before. Key home and key end became trivial. All we had to do is literally set for home the position to 0 and then update the cursor position. And then for the end, we set it to the length of the string. Not the length of the string minus 1, but the actual length of the string so that we wind up after that last character, right? And so we then update the cursor position for that too, right? And so with all that, I think I already built this earlier, but let me just go ahead and check. We did have a minor version update, so there's that. Right. And we'll go ahead and run this real quick. Let me just bring down our debugger here, and we'll run. All right, and just to make this a little easier to see, I'm going to load up a scene. And I'll bring up our debug console. And you can see I kind of cleaned this up a little bit. I moved this over here and kind of straightened things out a little bit. And so we now can see that we have our cursor here. And so I can move to the end, or to home, left and right, and we see that we correctly move the text back and forth as we navigate, right? So like I said, I can hit the end key and go all the way to the end. I can hit the home key. I can delete. I can go to the end. I can backspace. I can go back home, right? Delete all of it. I can type rubbish in here, hit enter, and, you know, we get our proper error message, right? I can type LOL. I can go back through the history and all of that. And all of that works, right? And I can even go exit, right? And it quits. So now that Textbox is actually working as we expect, which is awesome. And that leaves us in a really good position to sort of tie this up tonight. So let me just quickly catch up on chat. Let's see. By the way, I think some would consider this a sin, but I'm using DirectX Math with Vulkan. Really? How's that working out for you? Because that's interesting to me. I mean, I don't consider it a sin, you know. If you don't want to roll your own math library, then that's cool. You know, the DirectX Math library is tried and true. You're using Windows today. I thought I would never see it again. Yeah, so I had to switch to Windows a little while ago because I was having driver issues on Linux. And those driver issues were actually causing OBS to die, which was killing the stream, which is definitely not ideal, right? So I've got to rethink that streaming setup a little bit. And ideally, I'd like to come up with something where I can eventually have like a separate streaming setup that just is responsible for that. And then maybe we can pipe in whatever desktop I'm actually using, and we don't have to worry about those driver issues, right? So that's kind of the end goal, but for now, I've just switched back to this because there doesn't seem to be any driver issues as far as I can tell on Windows yet. So, on Rainbow, thank you so much for the follow and welcome to the stream. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. How are you doing tonight? Hope you're doing well. It works perfectly, to be honest. There's some because everything has to follow SIMD alignments, but it's nice. Okay, that's pretty cool. We have ads real quick, so I'm going to pause for that. So for those of you who are new to the stream and can still hear me, we have a ad break. We break for ads on this stream. Let me actually notify the YouTube side of this. And we break for ads whenever they come up on Twitch because we don't want to miss any content that's on the screen, right? I don't want you guys to miss it. And some people get served ads, some people don't get served ads. Some people only get served like 30 seconds of ads, some people get the full 2 minutes, right? And so I take the lowest common denominator there, and I just say, okay, well, we pause the stream for 2 minutes, right? And that way nobody misses anything, right? So we like to just kind of do that. Just because I'd like to keep you guys in mind, right? You guys are here watching the stream. I want you to see all of it, right? So that is the rationale behind that. We've got 45 seconds left on ads, and we'll get right back to it. How are you guys over on the YouTube side doing? It's a little quiet over on that side. Hope you guys are doing okay. I am watching this chat over here as well. So if you guys have any questions or things you want to talk about, feel free to jump into chat. Ads finished earlier today. That's funny. I wish, right? Ad revenue actually does add up little by little over time, though. So there is that. All right, we are back. Gasquaki over on the YouTube side. I hope I pronounced that right. Hi, just lurking. I appreciate the lurk. Thank you so much. Appreciate the support on that. Appreciate you being here. So, really we only have a couple things left to do, but I think before we actually jump into that, I'm going to go ahead and commit what we do have. So, if we do a git status on this, these are all the things that have changed, right? And like I said, I added some stuff to the README and some pictures, right? So a lot of this is that as well. But I want to go ahead and get this pushed up as a separate commit, so that way we don't have to sort of jam all this in there at once, right? And it'll make it a little easier to kind of see it split out. So, oops, we'll say commit. Textbox, navigation, complete, updated, readme with build, run, and additional info. Various bug fixes. Right, we don't need to go into each individual one. So do that, push, and there we go. So that is all pushed up to the repo. So you guys can actually grab that if you wanted to. As soon as I get some money, I'll sub because I'm still receiving other languages ads. Really? Are you still getting French ads? That's so bizarre. Like, why would they run French ads in Brazil if that's what you're actually still getting? It's really weird. But I guess, you know, it's whatever they can fill in that slot, I suppose, right? It's not French, but not Portuguese. Do you know what it is? Just out of curiosity. Very strange. Other than very strange, I should say. Okay, so... let me see. So I guess the next thing that we need to do is in our to-do, I think it was up here somewhere, the ability to highlight text and then add, remove, overwrite highlighted text. So the way that this is generally managed with highlights and so forth, and we're not going to worry about mouse input just yet. We're probably going to handle mouse input in the future, right? I think being able to do it on the keyboard is enough for right now. And so, and I actually spelled highlight wrong. That's awesome. So generally the way that it works is you have your general cursor position where you can move back and forth. And then highlighting is basically just highlighting multiple characters, right? Like this. And then generally when you have like a highlighted selection, you can like delete that text, or you can paste in text over top of it or something like that, right? And so with that is basically what we're going to implement, right? But the thing that you have to bear in mind is technically we can start a highlight region and then select text that goes outside of the text box, and like that highlighted region kind of also needs to be clipped, right? Because you could technically select the whole thing as well, right? And so we're going to have to keep that in mind. And my initial idea on how to do this is actually going to just be to use another panel that is semi-transparent, right? So we're just going to overlay it, which is kind of the similar look that we have here, where we just have sort of this bluish color that highlights it, right? So we're going to kind of do the same or a very similar thing for our highlighting. This time was English. Just doesn't make sense because I literally can't even afford things in the local currency. Yeah, taxes are absolutely insane there, right? What's up? You said mute? Am I muted? I don't think I am. You guys can hear me, right? My OBS is saying that you guys should be able to hear me. I don't think I'm muted. Yes, and maybe they're going to increase. Wait, aren't they already like 95%? How can you increase from 95%? I mean, I guess 100%, right? Or oh, he was suggesting you to mute the ads. That makes sense. Okay. That does make sense. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess taxes could theoretically outweigh the actual cost of the thing, too, if it gets that out of control. Less than $50 is only 17%. They maybe will increase those, but after $50 is 92%. That, yeah, I feel for you. That is insane. And that is one of the reasons that when we actually start building our game, and when we release a game using this, that game will have regional pricing for that reason. Because I think that's a very important thing, especially in situations like that where taxes are astronomical. They literally don't want you to buy from foreign places, I guess. I guess that's what it is, right? It's like a huge tariff, essentially. But I mean, it gets really weird when you start talking about things like software. It's really bizarre. But yeah, I've already done a lot of thinking about this, and you know, when we actually get ready to start creating a game with this, which is going to be soon, we are going to have regional pricing on that for sure. So rest assured, I am considering that. All right. So highlighting. We actually probably do need to go back here. So we have this clip mask, right? And right now we're basically rendering this text box control with, we're using a 9 slice, we're using a content label for the text, and then we're using a panel for the cursor. And we are actually going to use another panel for the, I'm going to call it the highlight box, right? That's how we're going to accomplish this. We're basically just going to use another panel because that's the tool that we already have. And there's no reason we shouldn't use it, right? It already exists. Why write something new? And you'll buy it. Awesome. Yeah. I'm hoping that makes it, you know, successful in other places, right? I'm going to do regional pricing around the world for sure. Because the US dollar rate of things doesn't make sense everywhere. So let's see. In create, we are creating the label here, creating the panel here. So we're basically just going to do this same exact operation. But this is going to be the highlight. I spelled it wrong again. Highlight box, right? And we're going to say highlight panel is what we'll call that. And then let's see. So the panel size is going to wind up being, it's going to need to be the same height as the font, right? So if I'm not mistaken, this first one is our size. Yep. So our size initially, I guess we can start at a size of 1, right? And the height we'll just leave at the font size for now. We might need to add some padding at the top and the bottom, but we'll figure that out later. And the colors that we want to use, I'm going to go with an R of 0, red of 0. The green I'm going to try like 0.5. And then 0.9 for the blue. And then I think I'm going to do 0.5 transparency. And this is going to go to, instead of cursor, it's going to be highlight box. Right? Internal highlight box control for Textbox. Okay, and that's our highlight box. So that's the creation of it, rather. So let's see. When we load up, we need to go ahead and load that. So we're going to actually follow the same steps that we followed for the panel control. So this is the content label. Here's the cursor. And this is all the cursor as well. All the way down to here. So I'm actually going to copy this and come down to here. I'm going to say load up a panel control for the highlight box. Right. Failed to set up highlight box within Textbox. Create the highlight box and attach it as a child. Now, we are doing that with the cursor, and we're doing that with the, were we doing, no, we weren't doing that with the label control. And since we're going to need to clip the label control, we're actually going to need to handle this the same way. So we're actually going to take this and copy it. And we are not going to do any of these things. Right? So this is not going to be label data. This is going to be highlight. We'll call it highlight data. This is going to be panel, and this is going to be highlight box data. So we need to set an initial position, which I guess doesn't really matter all that much, simply because we're going to create a function that's going to fire immediately and change it anyways. But we'll go ahead and set something anyway. So we'll say panel data. Ooh, we actually need the font data from... Okay. So we actually do need this label data as well. To get the font size. Let's see. So cursor. So this is going to be highlight box is active, and this one we're going to default to false. Actually, no. We want visibility to be false. Right. So typed data highlight box is visible equals false. Right. We want it to be active. We don't want it to be visible. Oops, and then we need to make sure we change highlight box here. This needs to be highlight box. Highlight box. There's a lot of valuable knowledge in your engine. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that it's valuable and that folks get something from it, right? That's the whole purpose of me doing this series is, you know, I'm looking to create the resource that I didn't have, that I wish I had when I was learning how to do this stuff, right? And as I've said many times, it might not be the most correct way to do it. It might not be the most optimal way to do it, but it is a way to do it, right? And it's a learning experience both for you guys as well as me. Because every time you write an engine, you learn something, right? And that's why I've written so many. But this one, we're taking all the way to production, and we are going to release multiple games with this guy. So, lots to learn. Okay. This needs to be highlight box. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any other ones here. I don't think I have. These are all highlight box. These are highlight. Okay. So we have that. And then what we actually need to do is something very similar to our cursor update, right? So we want to say ensure the highlight box size and position is correct, right? And we're going to call this SUI Textbox update highlight box, right? And that's what we're going to call that. And it's just going to take self. That way we can access all the sort of sub-controls, right? That's the idea there. So let's see. That's all we'll need to do for that. So I'm just going to go and prototype this really quickly. And we'll fill out the actual definition here in a bit. So static. This one's going to be I think we can just do a void return type on this one, right? And we'll fill out the details of it here in a bit. So this self is going to be SUI control pointer. And that's all we should really need for that. Okay. So we've created the highlight box. We've loaded the highlight box. We really need to handle this unload stuff also at some point. unload sub controls that aren't children, i.e. Cursor, nope, content, label, and highlight box, right? Try to come back to that before we actually check all this stuff in. The update, there is a minor thing I want to add to that, but we don't need to do that right now. The next bit is going to be this SUI text box control render. So the way that we handle this is we're going to handle the highlight box the same as we handle the label, right? So we're going to manually render the label, manually render the highlight box, and we're actually going to have to, do this twice. Right, so we're gonna want to render this and then attach twice to it. So we actually need all of this, right? Let's do this, and then it's the same thing, right? So render the highlight box manually so that the clip mask can be attached to it. This ensures the highlight box is rendered and clipped before the cursor and other children are drawn. So we want to do highlight box render, highlight box, pass it p-frame data and render data. That's the same as normal. Failed to render content label. So this is going to be highlight box for text box, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's fine. And then our check for this is actually going to be a little bit different, right? And it's actually going to be different for this too, because we're not always going to want to render this. So actually, what we need to do is we actually need to add something in addition. So we have our highlight box here. We also need, don't we have a range? Highlight range. And I think these are U32s if I remember correctly. Oh, they're U64s. Range typically of memory. Let's create a type that's kind of similar to this, but is only going to use 32-bit integers, right? So we'll call this range 32, and this will be have a 32-bit offset and a 32-bit size. And I guess we could still say in bytes, right? It doesn't have to be memory, but that's kind of what makes sense here, right? So we'll say range 32 is what we'll use, because we don't need 64 bytes for this. Our text boxes are not going to be that long. Chovy Church, first time chat. Welcome to the stream, first off. Which episode did you move away from VS Code? I'm only in 16 episodes. It was way later in the series. In fact, it was quite a while after we started live streaming here. I can quickly look at the playlist to see. Give me 1 second to just pull that up. Here.
Have you?
And I can probably tell by the thumbnails. Okay. It was somewhere around looks like episode either 103 or 104. So yeah, it's quite a ways in. Taman, how's it going? Good to see you here and welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. Hope you're doing well. All right, so we have this highlight range, right? So we'll save that, and we're actually going to we're only going to do all of this. So we're going to say only only perform highlight box logic if there is a selected range. In fact, actually, we don't even need the range to do that. We are going to need range. But we can actually just check the visible flag. That'll actually be even easier. If it is visible. Right? And so we can wrap this whole thing in a, let's see. Do we have... I don't think we have the typed data for that just yet. So we need that. We can steal that from our load. Let's see. Where was that? That's the cursor. Here it is. Right, so we need our highlight data. So we can just put that there. And then say if highlight data Actually, we don't even need that, do we? We can actually just look at typed data, highlight box is visible, right? So we'll look at that, wrap this whole thing in that. And then we can actually do away with this, right? So if our highlight box is visible, then we'll go ahead and render the highlight box and then attach a clipping mask to it. Which at this point, it's going to use the same clip mask. Same position and all that because it's clipping it to the same area, so we can reuse that. The renderable count is going to be a new count because this would have already been rendered, so this is still accurate. So yeah, this should all just work. So we don't need this. Okay, so that's the render portion of that. So I suppose what we should probably do is at least set it to visible and maybe a little bit of size just so we can actually see it there to make sure it actually exists and is in the right spot, right? So when we load this up, actually I think it was in the creation that we did this. I think, yeah. So in the creation, let's actually just change... Let's change this to like 50 pixels, right? And see where we wind up. Do we actually set the... I think we set the position of this as well. Cursor... Yeah, okay. So I'm hoping that this is at least close enough. And we'll fine-tune the position and all that afterwards. But let's go ahead and build this. The heat wave in your city. Oh, how bad is it? Oh, wait, it hit 55C? Dude, that's super hot. I complain when it gets around 40 here. That's insane. 55C. I can't even wrap my head around that. Let's see. Unused variable 286. Didn't I? Well, I guess we didn't need to use that, did we? No, because all we needed was label data for that. Okay, so we actually don't need that, I guess. You got to 58.5C? That's crazy. That is crazy hot. I can't even process that in my head. I think I would just like spontaneously combust, quite honestly. All right, so let's bring this up. And I am not seeing our highlight box. Oh, I know why. Because I didn't flip the visibility flag. This right here. True. It's 137F for those of you who use freedom units. Yeah. I figured it was somewhere around there, right? I couldn't do the calculation in my head, but I knew it was above 120. That's stupidly hot. I thought that was like desert that got that hot. I didn't think it got that hot in like regularly inhabited areas like in South America. That's crazy. I didn't realize it got that hot down there. It's nuts. And I say that having previously lived in Florida, which got pretty hot there, but although the jet stream kept that from becoming desert, right? So, all right, I'm still not seeing this. So, are we actually hitting this? Textbox, render. Let me just make sure. Okay, we are hitting this. So the renderable count is 5. So we should be... Let's take a look at this and say render data, renderables, and this is an array of, let's say 6 for right now. So expand these guys out a little bit. So the last one in here should be this, right? Because that was index -1, I believe. Yep. All right. Okay. Matrix data looks... It's got a transform. Oh. Did we... No, I'm pretty sure we actually corrected that code. So, highlight box X form. So that's that transform, but did we actually parent the transform at all? What's the content label? Does not look like we did. Oh, we... okay, so it's probably like off in the corner of the screen and getting clipped. Okay. So... That's what we missed. We missed... this step. So we set the position, right? But we also need to parent it. So we need the... highlight box to be parented to the base transform. And you're not even in summer yet. No, that's true. You're just transitioning to it. How's the humidity? It's not the heat, it's the humidity. Yeah, that's true in Florida anyways. Under 70%. That is pretty low, actually. Today got as low as 38%. That's like desert level low. Guess I'm losing some great opportunities to go to the beach. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those grass is always greener on the other side of the fence deals, right? All right, so, oh, let me take this breakpoint away. There we go. There it is, right? So our position's a little bit off, right? Which is not a big deal because we're gonna correct that. But there's our highlight box, right? So that's the color that we're gonna be dealing with. So we know that works. Cool. All right. So let's change this back to false, right? Because we don't want the highlight box visible by default. Can't imagine it being much hotter than that and it's still being survivable. Yeah, that's crazy. I hate to be this guy, but while it rarely goes far above 105 F, 40.5 C here, the humidity is constantly through the roof during the summer. Yeah, that's the truth. And in the south of the US for sure. Just looked it up, but it seems so. I also don't like that much. Don't look that much. I'd rather keep some sanity. Yeah, that's fair enough. One of the biggest reasons I moved from Florida to where I am now is because we basically didn't have any seasons. It was just hot all year round. And then we'd have like 2 weeks where, you know, it dropped into relatively comfortable temperatures and then right back to heat. And that got really old. So I moved north. Not so far north that I'm going to be buried in 16 feet of snow, thankfully, but further north. But it still reaches around 40 here in the summer, 40 C. It's literally Rio. It's heat all the time. Yeah. Florida's very much the same way. Gross. I do not understand why people love it so much. That and it's overcrowded. It's hot and it's overcrowded. We have well-defined seasons. Dante Alighieri called them circles of hell. That's fair. I'd take snow over heat any day. Yeah, I'm kind of in that same camp, to be honest. The only part of it that sucks is if your power gets knocked out and it's cold. But at least with that, you can bundle up. If your power gets knocked out and it's hot and you're stuck without AC, which happens in Florida a lot because of hurricanes, that's a different kind of screwed. So, yeah. You live 10 minutes from the beach, so you guess it's a little supportable. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I guess this highlight box is the next thing we need to do, right? The update highlight box. And so the thing that I'm thinking is it's going to be a slightly modified version of what we have for the text box scrolling back and forth. In fact, a lot of it might wind up actually overlapping completely. So let's do... We have calculate cursor offset. I think we might actually be able to use cursor offset for the highlight box. I think we can actually reuse this function. So I'm actually going to take this and move it down here. Because the range technically isn't a cursor position, right? But we could take both values of that range, because both values of that are cursor positions, and feed it into that function and get our start and our end. which I think makes a lot of sense. So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing we'll do is, let's see, Textbox calculates cursor offsets. So we are going to take a Textbox control here. But instead of the cursor position, we are going to say highlight range offset is the first thing that we're going to use. All right. And then this is going to be offset start. And then offset end is going to literally just be offset plus type data, highlight range, offset size rather. Right, so beginning and end, those will be our offsets. And so we can then say Nate, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Oh, we have ads. Missed that. So for those of you who can still hear me talking, I'd like to have ad breaks whenever Twitch actually throws out ads. Some people get them, some people don't. Some people only get like 30 seconds of ads. Some people get the full 2 minutes. And so I like to kind of pause the stream for that full 2 minutes just to make sure that nobody misses anything, right? Sometimes I miss it. I'm a couple seconds late here on this one. But yeah, I just kind of like to do that just to, you know, kind of make sure you guys don't miss stuff and have to like go back into the VODs and try and find it and all that stuff, right? So we got about 45 seconds left, and then we'll get right back to it. And I'll wait to say thanks for the follows until after we get back into the stream, because I don't know that all you guys can hear me. So got about 20 seconds left, and then we'll get going. All right, we're almost there. All right, cool. We are back. So Nate and Howard, thank you so much for the follows. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Nate, I started to say thank you for the follow, but then I realized there was an ad break. So I appreciate the follows, guys, and welcome to the stream. So let's see. It's crazy that we live so close and met through a Twitch stream of a guy in the US. Yeah, that is nuts. The internet really is magic, absolutely. It's also deeply horrifying sometimes, but it's magic too. How's things going with DirectX 12 Vulkan, by the way? Do you mean in terms of like the backends that I'm doing here? Or were you talking to Trash Can there? The crazier thing is that Brazil is huge, so the chances were low. Yeah, that's true. I've been doing fine, I guess. Okay, yeah, that's just you guys talking. By the way, DirectX Math works fine with Vulkan. It's kind of fun. That's awesome. Yeah, just have to account for handedness. Fair enough. Yeah, and that's probably going to be my reason for not using the DirectX Math when I go to implement DirectX Math, or DirectX rather, for Kohi. Because my handedness is not the typical. Tried using XMM matrix transpose and had everything broke. Oof. Is that because your matrices were not supposed to be transposed, or they were already transposed and you were trying to like... You always use left-hand functions, fair enough. All right, so we have offset start and offset end. We're also going to take a width, right? And we're going to just say that this is offset end minus offset start, right? And I think before we actually check all of these things, one thing that we should probably do is like a quick shortcut for all of this stuff. Is we can say if type data highlight range dot size equals 0, then we can just return, right? If we don't have a highlight range, then there's no point in actually doing any of these things, right? One thing we can do is we can go ahead and hide the highlight box, right? So we can say type data highlight box is visible equals false. And then just for good measure, if we are not in that scenario, we should probably go ahead and show it, right? So go ahead and do that here. Right? Because if we have a range, then obviously we want to show it, and this is where that should be done. Okay. So we have the offsets, start and end. We have the width. We have the padding. So the next thing is we probably need to figure out, we'll say the beginning of the you know what? We can actually simplify this further. We can simplify this a lot further. If we set the highlight box as a child of the label, then all we really need to do is set the beginning and the end position, and it'll sort of just translate with the label as we scroll the label. That's what we're going to do. That actually makes a whole heck of a lot more sense than what I was about to do, which was to recalculate all that crap twice, which is totally not necessary. So, instead of parenting it to self-transform, we're going to do self-content label xform. Oh, right, I need type data. So again, we're only going to parent the transform though, not the control, right? Because we still need the clipping mask to work against it. So yeah, that should actually save us a lot of effort. Let's see. Vulkan viewport's Y coordinate freaked you out? Kind of random, but do you use CMake to generate your make files? Nope, I write them by hand. Following along the Mac OS and was wondering if CMake is easy or worth learning. So I'll say this. If for no other reason, learn how to use CMake so that you can come up with a better way of doing it, right? CMake is a little bit of an industry standard, right? So a lot of people do use it. I find it overly complicated for what it does, and I find it a pain in the butt to work with, right? I'm not a fan of it whatsoever, but knowing how it works is probably a valuable thing. Understanding what it does is probably a valuable thing. So that you can say, okay, well, I understand why this was done, why it exists, but I'm not going to do it that way because I have garbage in respect to trash in the chat. That's fantastic. Travis's love for CMake is just like my cat's love for me when he bites me. Yep, that's that's awesome. There's nothing about that I don't like. But yeah, I would say at least have an understanding of what it does and how it works. That's probably not a bad thing. I would also take the time to kind of learn how makefiles work, at least on the surface, right? You can always Google how to do some of the more advanced things. I know I certainly have, right? it's always worth understanding the underlying elements of the tech that you use, right? So I don't personally use CMake, but that comes from having used CMake in the past enough to know that I don't want to use it anymore, and I find it overly complex. I didn't just come to that opinion from nowhere, if that makes sense. I hope that clears that up and answers the question for you. Okay. So all we really need to do here then is we need to, let's see, we can set the transform, right? So we can say transform position set. We need the address of the typed data highlight box xform, and the position that we want to set is actually going to be vector3 made up of the offset start, which is going to be our initial position, and then we should probably just set the other two remaining elements to whatever that position was. So we'll say vec3. Let's see, do I want to do that? Yeah. So vec3 initial position equals transform position get type data highlight box xform, right? And then we can say initial position dot y, initial position dot z. Oh, that should be vector3. Okay, cool. So we can set the position. And then the other thing that we're going to have to figure out is how to actually set the width of that. And I'm actually thinking if we set the width of the initial panel to 1, then we might be able to cheat and use scale for that, right? Because if we set the number of pixels, right? If we go by the number of pixels and it's 1 pixel wide to begin with, and we scale that 1 by however many pixels we need, it should, in theory, line up. So when we create the control, let me just verify. We had set this to 50 to test, right? But I'm going to set this to 1 width, right? That way we're not having to re-upload the vertex data. So I think we can literally get away with just setting the scale on this. And so we'll say transform scale. Transform scale set. And we want the address of typed data, highlight box xform. And we're going to take a vector3. And this is going to be made up of, we're going to use width as our scale. I think that makes sense. We might also have to offset this by padding, but we'll see. So we'll say width is our scale, and we will say that the other two axes are going to be 1, a scale of 1, right? And I think that will get us where we need to be. Chris92 and Friendly Nerd, thank you guys so much for the follows. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. I hope you guys are doing well tonight. You'll stick with learning makefiles then. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Getting familiar with makefiles is never a bad thing, right? And in fact, I'm going to be revisiting our makefiles sometime soon in the stream. So, Soon Vulkan will get a maintenance extension that will allow you to use DXGI swap chains. What? Is that actually a thing? I hadn't heard about that yet. That's interesting. I mean, but why though? Why would they want... Why would you want to mix from a different pipeline like that? I can't even wrap my head around why you'd want to do that. Hey, what's up? Using the self parameter in your functions reminds me of how we tried to utilize some object orientation in C in university classes. Do you have the same intention by doing that? So this is about as close to inheritance as we're going to get, and this entire project is with the UI system. Only because we have this sort of, this base, what I call a base control, that we then have this internal data, right, assigned to. So kind of yes, but kind of no, right? Because it's not true inheritance, really. But yeah, that's kind of the intent, more or less. Because Vulkan swap chains are something else. I mean, Vulkan swap chains aren't that bad. Not once you get used to them. So you can get the full Windows TM experience. Yeah. To be honest, I see people using it. DXGI is pretty solid. It is. I just can't... I don't know why you'd mix the two. Like, I would use one or the other. Or, like, if you are going to use both, I would either use all of one or all of the other and, you know, just use one or the other, I guess. Nope, Jar, did that answer your question? I hope. I see Vulkan as this multi-platform API, which it is. Which is weird. That's why it's weird to me that they're putting DirectX stuff in it. But if you focus on Windows, then yeah. But see, if you focus on Windows, why not use DirectX? Right? Like, if you're... Like, if my intent with this game engine was to release on Windows only, I'd use DirectX. 100%. And I am going to have a DirectX backend, but that's to support, like, consoles and stuff in the future. Okay. So let's see. Is there anything else I would need to do in here? So we've set that to visible, we've set the position, we've set the scale. So I guess to test this, I'm going to set a highlight range, just to see if it kind of works the way that I think it should, right? And then we'll mess around with the highlight range logic. So when I go to create this, hack, remove this rubbish. Wow, why did it... Really, Vim? Why did you do that? Okay. Type data. Highlight range. We'll say the offset is going to be equal to... Let's go 2 characters in, right? And then we'll say type data, highlight range, size. We're going to highlight 5 characters. And did we set... Did we set the y-axis on this? We used initial position y and z, but I think here we actually had... we actually used a hard-coded value of 6 for this guy. So I'm tempted to just say initial position, just to kind of get it to line up a little bit. I'm not sure that that's going to be right, but we'll see. Yeah, totally. You got a point. I think I'm too newbie to think about the details, though. I'm doing DirectX 12 because I plan to support only Windows and Xbox. Yeah. If that was my plan, then yeah, I would go DirectX 12 as well. Honestly, I'm doing Vulkan right now for curiosity and also because I want to see it working on my phone. Yep, that's the reason I'm going Vulkan, right? Of course, you could use OpenGL for that too, but I don't know how long that's going to be supported. I like the DirectX API. Yeah, I think it's the cleanest of the bunch, honestly. At least 11, 12. Yeah. 9 wasn't bad either, in my opinion. But that's, you know, a long time ago. Unused padding. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out because I'm pretty sure we are going to need that. Well, actually, we might not. We might not actually need padding. We'll see. All right, so let's run this and see what we get. We should see 2 characters in and then 5 characters highlighted. That's what we should see. Whether or not that's what we'll get, let's see. Okay, so it's off vertically, but I'll be dipped if that isn't correct. Look at that. So we have the M and the E, the space, and the R and the E. So that's actually lined up perfectly. That's exactly what we want it to be doing. We just have to figure out the vertical aspect of that, right? So I think I need to re-look at how the panel geometry is generated. Because I can't remember if it's center-based or if it is based around top left. So let's go to panel control create. And actually it's going to be load. So we create a simple plane. Xmin, Xmax. Wait, are those? Those are textures. Okay, so we have a width and a height, so it is 0 based, I believe. Tills. Generate quad 2D. Yes, they are 0 based. Okay, so that would mean that we're going to have to compensate for the way that our text is generated. Because our text is actually centered based off the bottom of the font line, right? So minus the tails, right? So what I mean by that is like, let's see, I still have this open actually from last night. So if we can clear all this, let's see. I don't think I'm going to be able to clear all this, but maybe. Okay. So if we are talking about some text, right? We have letters that are like this, right? And then we have other letters that are like this or like a J, right? And so our fonts basically render with this is the 0 position, right? So we basically just have to figure out what this value is and then offset it by this much, right? And we should be good. So the first thing I'm going to try is, instead of using that hard-coded value of 6, we will use, let's see, label data, data, which is our font data, and then I guess we'll use the line height of that. Is that going to have to be negative, though? I think it's going to have to be, because of the way that the text is positioned. So we can get rid of that, right? Because that's not going to be configurable. That's going to be based off the actual font. You're too young for 9? Yeah, fair enough. At least programming on DirectX 9. You were 1 when DirectX 9 came out? I feel old. Jesus. You were 1 when DirectX 9 came out. Oh, dude, I remember DirectX 7. I didn't know I was that old. Yeah. You're the new guy in the room? Yep, I guess so. I wanted to do some engine programming end of the night, but I'm at a point of designing stuff in my head. Yeah, I get that. We're probably going to be looping back to that very shortly on this stream, to be honest. All right, let's see how wrong my changes are now. Let me move this back over here. Okay, so this is pretty much exactly like I described, right? So we've offset by the negative line height, right? So what you'll notice is that now the bottom of this box is perfectly aligned with that line that I kind of discussed here, right? This guy. So I don't remember if I actually stored what this was, right? We have the line height, which is technically the whole thing, but I need to shift down by this amount, and I don't remember if I store that. I'm on vacation from uni, so I don't know. Maybe I'll try and draw some weird geometry. Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way you're going to get good at it. It's just sit down and try stuff, right? So I wonder if it's literally adding back the 6 that we were dealing with before. And if it is, that'll be the same configurable option that we have to use, right? So let's test that. Six didn't quite do it. Oh, it might. I wonder if it's the padding amount, right? It might be 10. We might not. We might actually. I don't know if it's that or it's a coincidence, right? But let's try 10. Nivlak, hello. How is it going? Good to see you. For those of you who aren't aware, Nivlak is also a mod on my Discord server, so good to have him here. He has banhammer powers, FYI. So Coffee Lava, don't get banned. Out of curiosity, do you know from head those math functions to create a cylinder or square from code? I know the concepts. Could I implement it right now without like any sort of a reference? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. I feel like I'm forgetting them too easy. Here's the thing though, like how often do you have to write that? Right? Like even Albert Einstein said, never memorize something you can look up, right? So like there's a limit to the crap you should memorize. Like that's one of the biggest things that I have an issue with these coding interviews is they're like, you should memorize all these algorithms and all these data structures and how to implement them completely from scratch, right? And I think that's utter ridiculousness, right? Because how often do you actually write that stuff? It's perfectly acceptable, in my opinion, to look that stuff up when you need to write it, right? Because you write it once, you get it working the way you need it to, and you're done. You never look at it again, unless there's a bug, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of my opinion on that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Could write some stuff for a game prototype I have in mind. Do it. Definitely do it. Be nice to me and we're all good. Fair enough, Nivlak. Yeah, you write them once and you're fine. Yeah, exactly. A square cube is just predefined vertices, to be honest. That's all it is. Yep. You should memorize how to initiate a Vulkan instance. You know what's funny about that is actually like the initialization of a Vulkan instance, you can literally just trace it backwards. Like you can just say, okay, well, I have this function which requires this struct. And then you look at the struct and you say, okay, I have to fill out these things in this struct. And then this struct requires this other thing. Okay, I have to go back and fill out these. Like, instantiating Vulkan's actually not that bad. It's some of the other things when it comes to like synchronization that gets a little bit tricky. Especially if you're like me who likes to rewrite the wheel 100 times. Yeah, I get that. I'm the same way. Sure, but pyramids and stuff like that took 2 days to understand. Yeah, but I mean, again, it's like you write that once and you're done, right? So like, I've written that stuff before. Could I tell you how to do it now? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I haven't committed it to memory. That's the one nice thing about Vulkan, yeah, is you can kind of trace it backwards. Yeah. I do this in code. I see what a function expects and start fulfilling the required stuff. Exactly. Yeah, you just kind of work backwards, right? Or, if you absolutely need to, you just look at the Vulkan spec. That just makes it a lot easier, right? And a cylinder is just using the circle equation while stepping the angle. Yep. Just a loop. Repeating for the height. Yeah. Or actually you could use the same, you could do it all in the same loop, technically. You could do the top and the bottom in the same loop. Write that once and you're done until you delete the code or forgetting to back shit up or stuff like that. Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, but like most of my code bases that are anything of importance, I store in Git anyways, so I don't ever have to worry about backups. If my hard drive takes a poop, I've got the important stuff backed up on the cloud somewhere, so you know, I've suffered enough loss from hard drive failure to never have that be an actual problem. The most annoying part about that is just having to reset up your environment and reconfigure everything, right? But Linux even kind of makes that easy with config files, right? You can literally just drop your config files in your home directory and bam, stuff works. Guess I'll just back up those generators and read whenever I need them. Yeah, just make a private repo on GitHub and throw it up on there. You'll have that reference forever then. Right? There's no need to rewrite that every single time. You know, there's certain things that I've written along those lines where you know, I wrote that original code 10 years ago. And I'm like, how did I do that back then? And I just go and look at an old repo and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Okay. Did I build this? I think I did, but I'm going to rebuild it anyways because I can't remember. I got distracted. Let's see, over here on YouTube chats. So, sorry I missed this for a bit of a while, but kind of random. But do you use CMake to generate your make files? Oh, okay, Chris W., you asked me this over on the Twitch side. Okay. I got to keep a closer eye on YouTube chat. That was the CMake question. Yeah, okay, I got it. Not even the power lines are managing the heat there. Oh, your power just went out? That sucks. Even Rio's power is bad. Yeah. I feel like everybody says that about the power company locally that they have, though. I know there were some spots in Florida that were absolutely awful about that. All right, so let's see how we're looking now. That highlight range to me looks pretty dang good, I think. It's looking, that's what we want, right? And so now we need a way to basically just change that range, and we should be good to go, right? And so our rule on doing that from the keyboard is basically if we move any of the navigation keys without shift being held, then that's going to get rid of a highlight if it exists. If shift is being held, then those ranges are basically going to be added or removed from as we sort of move around and navigate around, right? So all of that logic is basically just going to completely rely on whether or not shift is being held, right? So we can bake that into our current functions that we already have. So here we go. We already have a shift held, right? And so the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to get the highlight range stuff figured out, right? So we can highlight text and unhighlight text and things of that nature. And then what we'll do is once we have text highlighted, we'll actually go ahead and say, okay, well, if we hit another key to type a character, we're going to replace the highlighted range of text with whatever that is that we're adding in, right? Tammin, good night. Have a good one. Thank you for being here. Am I frozen across the board, or is it just for you? Oh, it's your internet. Oh, boo. Cell phone internet is bad. Only the chat is working. All right, well, that's disappointing. But yeah, Tammin, good luck with that, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for being here. All right. Oh, he froze because the power went. Yeah, okay, gotcha. All right, so I guess the first one that we'll handle is the left and right. So before we increase the cursor position, right? Before we do that, we will check first to say, is shift held, right? And if shift is held, then we're going to basically increase the size of the selection by 1, because this is the right key, right? And so I think at this point we can literally just say type data, highlight range, size, ++, right? Because if that highlight size is 0, then it'll increase to 1, or if it's not 0, it'll increase beyond that. So I think that will be fine. However, before we do that, we'll say if type data, highlight range, size equals 0, right? So we don't have a highlight. We're going to start a new highlight range. So we'll say type data dot highlight range offset is equal to the current cursor position, right? So type data cursor position, right? And then we'll go ahead and say, okay, increase the highlight range size by 1, and then move the cursor position, and then update that, right? And so we do that. We'll also need to say SUI textbox highlight or update highlight box, right? And we'll say self, right? So we update the highlight box as well. Okay. That should cover most scenarios, I believe. The only thing is if we have a... No, that should cover pretty much everything, right? So the next one is going to be the left key, which is going to get a little bit more complicated, right? So we're going to say if shift held. Oops, actually, I'm one line too far down. So if shift held, then we can check to see, first off, do we have, so we can actually do this same thing, right? Right. Zura, thank you so much for the follow and welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight? So if we don't have a current highlight, right, we're going backwards. So we don't necessarily want to set the offset. Well, I guess we could set the offset to the cursor position, right? And then we're going to have to actually kind of do this in opposite order. So we actually want to modify the cursor position first, I'm thinking, right? So we move the cursor back. Then we say if shift is held and the size is 0, then the offset is going to be the current cursor position. And then the type data highlight range size is going to be 1, right? Actually, we can just plus it here too. All right, let's see. Theoretically, both of these operations don't even matter whether or not we have the size there, right? Oh, we have an ad break. So for those of you who are new and can still hear me, I like to pause the stream whenever ads come up. On Twitch, at least. On YouTube, I don't know if you guys get ads over there or not. I don't think you guys really do get them. But on the Twitch side, we do have ads that run for like 2 minutes every once in a while. And depending on platform and locale/region, you get served different amounts of ads. So some people get served the full 2 minutes. Some people get served 30 seconds. Some people don't get served ads at all. But I like to take the lowest common denominator there and say, we're going to pause the stream for 2 minutes. That way nobody misses any content at all. And it just gives us a quick little break so that I can like hydrate and stuff like that, right? So, yeah, we like to break the stream for that so that nobody misses any content. So I hope that makes sense. And you know, it's not a very long break. In fact, we only have 40 seconds left, and we'll get back into it. So, thank you guys for being here and sticking with us so far. Right, we're making pretty decent progress tonight, and I think we're actually going to be able to wrap this up tonight. Pretty confident in that. All right. Nope, Jar, I will get to your question as soon as ads are over, just so that nobody misses it, okay? So we got about 10 seconds left on that. All right. And we're back. So thank you guys for sticking around. Okay, so if switches in C are faster, like in most languages, if you have many if-else, wouldn't it make more sense to handle the key press? Yes, potentially. The only reason I'm doing this is just because it's a little bit easier to handle at this level. But to be completely honest, this handling logic is never going to be the source of a performance bottleneck, right? This only happens once per key press, right? Like, it's not a huge amount of code that we're exercising here, and that's certainly not going to be the performance bottleneck, right? Like, the stuff we're doing in here is way more expensive than that. So what we actually have is we have these specific cases here at the top, and then if we scroll down, we actually do use a switch statement, right? So if we don't use any of these specific combos, then we do a quick check to sort of filter out some of the keys that we don't want to support. And then we go through and we actually have a switch statement here, right? To just kind of get some of these other codes and stuff like that, right? And obviously we'll have to improve on this as time goes, but we actually do use some switch statements in here for that reason. But yeah, that's hardly going to be the performance bottleneck when it comes to this. Switches are faster due to the fact that it's a few jumps instead of, well, many jumps. Exactly, yeah. But in this case, it's really not going to add up to be that much, right? All right. So we were looking at the left logic. So I actually don't even think that this matters, right? I don't think in this case we really care about this. I think we can literally just say the offset is always going to be equal to the cursor position, and the size is always going to be incremented, right? If we're going left. The only weird case about this is I'm thinking like if you highlight starting towards the right and you go left, that might be a little bit weird. But I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think we should be good. We should be able to like highlight going left and then like step it back and then have it highlight the other way and still be good. Actually, that's not entirely true. I do need this back. Because we don't want to modify the offset if we already have a size, right? So actually this needs to be done. Whoops, wrong button. This needs to be done here. So if the size is 0, but the size is never going to be 0 after. Let me think how I need to handle that. So if the size is 0, technically it should be if the size is greater than or equal to 0. No, that doesn't make sense either. So if we already have a left to right selection, we basically, if we're going left, we only want to decrease that size, right? So technically speaking, okay, so this does... I think we can say if typed data highlight range size how do we, if we say size is greater than 0, we really have to detect which end of the selection we're on. That's really what the thing is, not size here. Okay. So if typed data cursor position is currently equal to the offset, then we want to move the offset. We want to just subtract the offset, right? And technically that would also mean a size increase. So this can go in here. The only other case that could exist would be that we're on the other side of the selection with our cursor. Which would mean that we would need to not modify the offset but change the size. So type data highlight range size minus minus. And we're technically going to need a similar check here. So technically speaking, in this case, if the type data cursor position is equal to the typed data highlight range offset plus the size, right? Then we're not going to modify the offset. I'll move that out of here. We're just going to increase the size if we're going to the right. Otherwise, if we're going to the right, in this case, then that means that we are bringing the selection in from the left side, which means we need to increase the offset 1 and type data, highlight range, and decrease the size by 1. Now, these are unsigned ranges, right? Which is not really ideal. We should probably use signed integers for this. And the reason I'm thinking is because there is going to be some ranges that we want to be negative. But we also want to be able to clamp the size, right? So we need to be able to say clamp the typed data, highlight range, size. The minimum is going to be 0, and the maximum is going to be length, right? And then so we want to say size minus 1, and then take this, put it here, oops, there, set that equal, and then remove that, right? So that way we never go below 0 on that. And then offset doesn't matter at that point. And then we probably need to do the same thing here, right? So we can grab this same line and paste it in there. And I guess technically speaking, we should probably also clamp this here, but make this +1. Right, so we want to do that there too. So offsets also should probably be clamped. So this is equal to k clamp, type data, highlight range, offset -1. The minimum is going to be 0, and the max is going to be length. Right? And I suppose we might as well clamp it here as well with a positive change. Let's see. Great answer, thanks. Cool, awesome. Okay, so I think that should cover those scenarios with key left and key right rather. So let me try building. Oh, I changed defines, so it's going to build a whole bunch of crap now. Is that header file is used everywhere? Okay. Ah, right. It's going to bleat about unsigned versus signed. Because our... length is a U32. I mean, I'm not really worried about integer overflow here, so I'm just going to cheat. Oops. So I'll put that there. And there. Whoops. There. I think that's all of them. Nope, missed two more. Okay, so 491 and 504. 491. Oh, right. Okay, so cursor position. Right, this is bleating about that. Sure, I can do the same thing here, I guess. All right, let's see how whack this is. Oh, you know what? Did I? Remove this hack. Right. Technically, I didn't clear the. Oh, you know what? There's actually something I missed. If shift is not held for these guys, I need to set typed data highlight range size equals 0. Right? So that way the highlight goes away. All right. Which means that this guy needs to move down. And we actually don't even have him up here, I don't think. So we'll do that. Not 100% sure I have this stuff right yet, but we'll see. All right. So we can still move freely if I hold down Shift now and go to the right. That did not give me a highlight range. Oh, interesting. It works to the left, though. Interesting. Okay. So I think we're just not resetting things correctly. So we probably also need to do type data, highlight range, offset equals 0, right? So when we reset, we want to definitely reset that. Okay. So when we're starting a brand new highlight, we're going to need to set the initial offset on that. So we do need the case of if type data cursor position, not cursor position, highlight range dot size equals 0. Then we need to set the type data highlight range offset to type data cursor position. And this also is going to bleat if it's not an I32. Okay, so that'll create a new highlight. This technically, I don't think we actually need this, right? Because this should never wrap around to 0, because this is only actually going to work if our cursor position is greater than 0. So we actually don't need this. So this one we can safely decrement, now that I think about it. All right. So let's build that. And we'll go ahead and run. So we'll go ahead and highlight. I'll just start pressing Shift left. And it looks like we're off by 1. So that's interesting. It's highlighting to the left of the cursor. Maybe that's because we're pre-decrementing it. And the shift right doesn't seem to work at all. So we are saying that our cursor position here is updated first. I'm wondering if that's the right move. So what if we actually took this, put it down here? Right, because if we're starting that, we have the offset at the current cursor position. I'm not 100% sure that's right, but Weird Trash Can, going to sleep. Good night. Have a good one. Thank you for being here and participating. I greatly appreciate it. Glad to have you here. We're really in just sort of debugging some of this stuff now. Okay, so that looks correct now. So that seemed to be the right move there, right? So we can increase and decrease the highlight there, and it does actually stop all the way to the left. So that's cool. And if I just press the right key without holding shift, it does get rid of the highlight range. So that does seem to work, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, okay. So now we've got to figure out why the left version of that isn't working. Or sorry, the right version of that. The left is working. So in this case, we don't actually have anything to start off the selection. So that might actually be part of the problem, right? So if our range is, or if our size is 0, then we need to set the offset to the current cursor position, which I think is actually still going to be right even in this case. And then if the cursor position is equal to the range offset plus the size, which would be 0, so in this case that would be true, then we increase the size by 1. And then we move the cursor position. So let me just make this consistent with what's up here. so that all of this looks the same, right? That might actually just be all there is to that issue, is we didn't actually have something to start the selection. Right. Okay, so let's run. All right, so I'm going to hold shift now and go to the right, and it looks like that's working too, right? And if I go down to the left, it decreases that, and if I still hold it, it goes off to the right. So it looks like we actually have working selection, right? And I can deselect, create a new selection, right? So that's pretty sweet. We have that working. Now let's see how it works with scrolling. So I'm just gonna hold shift from here and go to the right and see if it scrolls over as we expect. And it looks like it does. And then I will do the same thing but backwards. And it looks like it does. So great. So highlighting with the arrow keys is working, right? Cool. All right. So this is basically going to be our more or less our logic for the home and end keys as well, right? So the difference there is going to be, we just have to figure out, instead of size +1 or size -1, that's really going to be the difference, right? Or this, right? So let me see how much, is there any of this logic that we could sort of make reusable, right? I feel like these are just different enough where I can't really reuse them all that much. I may figure that out offline, right? I think for right now, I'm just going to sort of do a little copy pasta, right? So I'm going to grab all of this, actually. And put it here. So we'll do home first. Wait, did I grab this top logic, right? Let me just make sure. Okay. So, if the highlight range size is 0, then we set the offset to that position. And then the next logic here will say if that is equal, which it will be in that case, we'll need to set the offset basically to the, well, the offset in this case will actually be 0, right? Right, but the size is going to be, the size at this point is going to be the current cursor position. So typed data cursor position, right? And that's the cursor position before we zero it out. So that should give us that highlights from wherever we are all the way back to the home key, right? Otherwise, we need to, I'm thinking, figure out the diff between the cursor position. Actually, is it the same thing? It might not be, right? So the size, I think this second case, we're going to have to actually invert this, right? So let's see, if we are, when would this not be true, though, if we're going to the home, right? So if our highlight range size is... I think this would always be what we need to do. I think. So I don't even think we need this check. I don't think we need this, or this, or this. I think it's literally... I don't even think we need this, actually. I think it's literally just this operation here. Let's test that theory. Raz, hello. Welcome to the stream. How are you doing? We are figuring out Textbox highlighting. So we've actually got a decent portion of it working already. I have the ability to basically hold shift and use the arrow keys to select in one direction or the other, right? And so now what I just wrote is the ability to like hold the shift key and hit home, and it should highlight back to there. It's not, though. So I need to figure out why, right? Because it should have highlighted that whole thing. So if we're holding shift, oh, I know why, because we didn't actually update the highlight. I'll bet it worked, it just didn't visualize it, right? I was gonna say that logic is pretty sound. All right. So let's go ahead and run that again. Right, and so now I should be able to move over a few, hold shift and hit home, and it highlights from that position, right? So if I go by the Y here, at the end of the Y, right, we should get our highlights from the end of the Y all the way back. And it looks like we do, right? And then if I hold shift and arrow over, we can modify that selection, right? Or I can hit home and go back, right? So now we just need to implement the end. Got it. I'm also working right now side by side. Nice to hear someone talking to cursive working from home. Yeah, I can understand that for sure. I work from home as well. So yeah, although having worked in environments with no cubicles and no walls separating people, especially in a game studio where it tends to get really loud with people horsing around and stuff, it's a lot easier to concentrate at home, you know? But yeah, I suppose it's one of those grass is always greener on the other side type deals as well. But okay, so for the end, our offset is going to be length, right? And then the size is going to be the cursor position. So, oh wait, no, we can't do it that way. It's got to be offset is type data cursor position. And the size is going to be cursor position subtracted from length. And then we need to update the highlight box. That should be it. You're game dev too? Yeah. Yeah, so it's in-office environments for that can be largely distracting, at least for me. I had a lot of trouble with it, right? I actually had to buy noise-canceling headphones at one point, and even that wasn't enough sometimes. All right, so if I select this, or if I hold Shift here and go to the end, it looks like that worked, right? Let me try it here. So to the end, to home, to the end, to home, to the end, to home. Okay, so it seems to add them together correctly as I would expect, right? The only thing is, when I have a selection that's like this, and I hit the left key, I would expect this to bounce to the end of that selection. Right, which I think is what happens with a normal text box. Let me confirm that real quick, because I might actually be off base there. Let's see, what the hell has a text box that I can actually test this with? Like a regular Windows text box, I guess. Notepad. I mean, Notepad's... Yeah, Notepad might do it. Or Notepad++, right? That would probably do it as well. So... if I have this highlighted, right, and I've been highlighting towards the left, and I hit the right key, yeah, it puts me at the end of that selection. If I highlight to the left, or from the left to the right, and hit left, it should put me at the end of the selection. I thought so. Okay. So, that's a thing. But thankfully, we can actually detect that, right? So when we do home and end doesn't matter, because that's just going to bounce us all the way to the end anyways. So left, before we zero out the size and offset, right? If we're going left, we're going to want to set the type data dot cursor position equal to type data highlight range offset. But then we don't want to, so we actually will need to move this up here, right? Because we only want to subtract from this if we're holding Shift. Otherwise, if we have a selection already that we're getting rid of, then we want to move to the highlight offset. That's not always true though. Because this also might be true. If type data dot highlight range dot size is greater than 0, right? So if we're clearing a highlight, we want to do that. Otherwise, we want to do this. There's got to be a way to simplify that. It's awfully branchy, and I'm not a fan of it, right? But I should probably test to make sure that works first. Let's test this in the left direction first. I think it uses the start and end pointer variable thing. The start and end pointer variable thing. You mean like for tokens and whatnot? Like, let me let's see. Oh, selection start, yeah. Yeah, so like if you're left, it goes to the selection start. If you're right, it goes to the selection end. Value. I think I know what you're saying. So it should. Right, so we've implemented the left portion of this. So if I highlight going to the right, and then I release shift and I hit the left key, it should put me right after, between the M and the E. Like that. Yeah. So that makes sense. So that's what we need to do. We need to do the same thing here. So first, if this is the case, we need to do that. And then we basically just need this here. So before we clear that, we need to say, since we're going to the right, we need offset plus type data highlight range size, right? So we need to place it at the end. Otherwise, we'll just increment it as normal, right? And then we clear the highlight range. Yep, adds. Just gonna break for a couple minutes here. And I think this is actually gonna basically finish off the text box for right now. So I will pull this up, but I'm not gonna actually test it until ads are over. So we got about 50 seconds left. Another 30 seconds and we can get back to it. Nivimy over on YouTube, hello. It's a little bit late, I know, but that side's been kind of quiet tonight, so I haven't watched it as closely, but hello. How are you doing tonight? Hope everything is going well. All right. We are back. This really lets us appreciate the details Microsoft and other devs did for all the small things we take for granted. Abso-freaking-lutely, right? Like, this is all the stuff that you don't think about when you're just using already existing UI controls, which is one of the reasons we did this, right? Is so that you can kind of understand everything that really goes into this stuff, right? And there's still some other stuff that we haven't even thought about in here yet, right? But okay, so we had the left jump working for left and right directional highlights. So now if we highlight going to the left and hit the right key without shift held down, we should jump to that position. Yep. And we do. We should also be able to highlight to the right and hit right without shift, and it should jump to that position, right? And so it looks like all of that is working as we expect, which is freaking awesome, right? So now what we can do is we can actually hit Control and then Shift End and Backspace. Oh yeah, we can't delete yet, right? So that's actually the last thing that we need to put in place, is use this selection range to actually do stuff, right? So what we're gonna do is for Backspace, we are gonna say this string remove at, we're basically just gonna switch this, right? So string remove at takes, if I remember, a position and a length, which is exactly what we have in our selection, right? And so what we can do is we can say if type data highlight range size is greater. Actually, I'll just say is greater than 0. And then we'll put this existing case in the else, right? And selected characters is about to get handled, so, right? So we're going to take a copy of this, put it here. And instead of using typed data cursor position, what we're going to do is, let's see, we need to move this cursor position to the else, right? Because we only want to backspace one position if we don't have anything highlighted. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to say string remove at, and instead of using the cursor position, we're going to use typed data highlight range offset and typed data highlight range size. Right? We're just going to remove that. And that should give us, I believe, everything we need. Let's see. Do we need to move the cursor position? We probably need to make sure the cursor position is set at the offset, right? So type data cursor position equals type data highlight range offset.
Thank you, Laz1789 for gifting 1 community subs.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for the gifted sub, Raz. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Any plans to support Wayland backend? So actually, yeah, I did actually run into some issues with high DPI displays, or a mixture of high DPI and regular DPI displays on X. And that's basically impossible to support correctly on X, right? And so, yes, Wayland is in the horizon, right? I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but yes, we are going to be supporting that natively at some point. That is in the cards for sure. Okay. So I think that's going to give us what we need, at least for the backspace. So let's test backspace. All right, so we will, I'm just going to highlight the word really and hit backspace. Okay, it did not clear my highlight range, which I'm not surprised because I didn't actually clear that, but it did correctly delete the text, right? So I just need to clear the highlight range, and that'll be fixed. So clear the highlight range. All right, so that'll be type data highlight range offsets equals 0, type data highlight range size equals 0, and we will also need to update the highlight box. Right, so that's going to go in here. Right, so that will fix that. I'm pretty confident with that. So what I'm going to do is actually move on to delete, which is basically going to be the same exact logic, I think. Yeah, it should be. It should be. So let's just take this, right? And delete is basically the same as backspace minus the cursor position change, right? So this should pretty much be the same thing. So we're going to branch it right after this, right? And then we'll go ahead and clear to the end there, and I am going to go ahead and update the... We do update the cursor position here. So technically, This should just work. Oh yeah, before I forget, Travis answers your DMs. Yes, I know. I saw that you DM'd me. But yes, after the stream, I will answer you. Yeah. Although the short answer to your query there is I don't have an answer yet, or an update. But, yeah. Build. All right. So let me just double check that this works now. We'll check both the backspace and the delete, right? So yeah, it's like all these little things that you just don't think about that have to be developed. That goes into these controls. When you write them from scratch, you just never think about it, right? So I'm going to hit backspace now, and that's gotten rid of that, right? Now I'm going to highlight the word long and hit delete, and it gets rid of that. So we're good, right? So now the last change that we're going to do is basically kind of the same thing, right? But we're going to handle inserting text, right? So what we're going to do is come down here to the input from any position, right? Which is technically handled now. So before we do this string insert character at, right, we actually need to perform a delete of the text that's there, right? So if we have a highlight range, then we're going to go ahead and do the thing, right? We'll delete, update the cursor position, right? And we don't actually need this else case at all. And then we'll insert the character there, right? And so this is actually no longer relevant. And so if highlight text is highlighted, delete highlighted text, then insert at cursor position. If I can type. All right. Cool. Rauf. Hello. Rauf? I hope I pronounced that correctly. I feel like I butchered it. But hello. Welcome to the stream. What'd I screw up here? Undeclared identifier string. Oh, do we not have the... Oh, it's called something else here. That's why. Let's see. Where was that? That was here. Entry control text. Is that not? Oh, it's bleating about the const. New text. What do we do up here? Oh, we did a string duplicate. Okay. I suppose we could do that, right? So let's change this up a little bit. So we'll use this, right? We'll use string there. String duplicates. String remove at. We'll call that. Sure, we can use that. That's fine. New text, I'm going to get rid of. Insert character at, I'm going to use string for. And then after we set the text, we're going to clean up string. Right? That should do the thing. I'm going to change this in the comment so it works there too, just in case we need that for some reason. All right. So, with any luck, this will also work. Right, so I'm going to highlight the word really and type the letter A. Oh, that didn't work. What on earth happened? Okay. Let me just review my logic here for a second. Oh, wait a minute. We can't... This might not actually be enough. It'll be enough if we're doing this delete operation, but it won't be enough if we're not doing the delete operation. So, okay, we can't do a straight duplicate here. So let's take the length. We're going to have to put this back the way that was, right? So I'm going to say kallocate. And I'm going to say size of character times length plus 2. Right? And then we'll have to copy that in there as well. Actually, I guess we don't really have to. So we'll say length plus 2. And then we'll mem tag string. Right, so we'll do that. And then down here we'll free string length tag. Okay. Oh, that might have actually been where it threw up. Okay. So if our highlight range is has a greater size than 0, we remove that, set the cursor position, clear the highlight range, update the highlight box. Then we insert a character at the character position, set the text, free that string, and move forward a character. Which we might not always necessarily want to actually do. So, okay. So we're going to actually have to check this twice. Right, so I'm going to put this here as well. With an else. And I'm going to do this here. Right, and we're only going to clear... Whoops. We're only going to clear the highlight range if we need to. Wandering Coder, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. We're just tying up our Textbox implementation here. Okay, this looks correct. So let's go ahead and build. And hopefully this will tie up this feature, right? Hoping. So this is the last, I think the last piece that we're going to implement for now anyway, as far as the UI goes. All right, so again, I'm going to highlight this word and just press the letter A. And it did not delete the text. It just inserted, which is really strange. So it should have done that and then done the thing, right? So I'm not sure why it didn't. And also highlighting all the text and hitting backspace doesn't work. So we've got some work to do. Okay. So if the highlight range size is greater than 0, we should be able to... Oh, wait. This is the source string, which is entry control text. Yep, it should be. Offset and range. Okay, so that should go straight into string. Right, because that is the destination. And then we set the cursor position, update the highlight box. Oh, this should not happen here. I'll bet it did work correctly. We just did the update wrong. So technically that should happen here after we clear the highlight. I think that was just a visual bug. Okay. All right, so we should be able to highlight this and then just press like S, and it inserted the string. Did it? Oh, it still didn't delete right off the bat, did it? So I should be able to basically do a single character change, right? That's inserting, but it's not actually removing the old text. Why is that? Why is that? So remove at. I think I'm going to have to step through this because I don't quite understand why it's not working, actually. So let's say this. Oh, wait a minute. No, this should be... Okay, let's put a breakpoint here. All right, and then we have... We'll highlight, and then I'll press, like, the A key, right? So we do have a character code. The selection size is 6. We have an offset of 5 and range of 6. Okay. Does our string remove at actually do the thing? So string length is 42. Remaining is length minus position minus... Wait. So 31. I think that's remaining after the cursor position. Right. So after we take away position plus length, right? And we take away that from the total length of the string, that's how many characters are remaining, which is 31, which does make sense. So we want to copy the source string up to the deletion point, to the new, to the destination, and then after, we want to copy afterwards. And then destination length minus 1. Oh, wait a minute, that's wrong. That's definitely wrong. Right, see, it deleted really from here, which is what I expect. Which I guess it just removed, like, I guess this doesn't really matter, right? Like, so we know that's correct. All right, so the cursor position is currently 11. And we're moving it to the offset of 5, right? Because that makes sense because we are at the end of the selection and we're moving backwards to the beginning. So that actually does make sense. And then we're inserting a character at the character position. We're inserting the A character, right? So that should just be... We're copying... first stuff to dest. Oh, but source and dest are the same thing, aren't they? Oh, I see what's happening. I see what's happening. We are doing the insert against the original string as opposed to the modified string. So this should be string. I can get rid of this. I'm pretty confident that's going to fix it. All right. So highlight really and press A. And perfect. It inserted it right where it should have. So awesome. Okay, so I should also be able to select this backspace, get that. Thank you for the stretch redeem. Okay. So now, if I press home, hold shift, press end. Oh, wait a minute, we got a little bug there at the end. Okay. This is garbage data after here. Okay, we have to fix that. That was an issue in the that was an issue with the remove at, right? So I was wondering, I was saying this isn't right? And it's definitely not. So instead of length minus 1, it should be length minus length, which is kind of... I'm going to rename this original length. Right. That should take care of that issue. Let me just make sure. That might actually be why our other function wasn't working. So if I highlight this and hit A, right? So that still works. If I go to the end, now it actually ends where it should. So that's correct. If I go home, hold shift, press end, and backspace, now that works. It clears the whole thing like I would expect, right? And so... Oh, interesting. It doesn't look like I can actually type stuff, though. Okay, so something there in the state is foobar. So let's put a breakpoint in here and see what the heck is going on. So, type data highlight range. It's been reset. Cursor position was not reset. Still thinks it's 32. Which is the whole issue, because I'll bet if I set this to 0, that would probably fix it, right? So if we have type data, where is it? Cursor position, set value, 0, right? If I just edit the memory and continue, now it's fixed, right? So we'll have to fix that. I don't know why that freaked out. Okay. So I guess let me put, you know what? Let me actually, how do I want to do this? So when I come in here and I hit end for that selection, I want to see what it actually does. Because I have a feeling there's something in here that's just wrong. So, all right. So I'm gonna hold. I'm gonna hit home, hold shift, and hit end. Right. So the offset should be cursor position, which is 0. That makes sense, right? And then the size should be length minus cursor position, so that should be 42. And then cursor position equals length. That's wrong. Oh, wait. Is it? No. No, technically that's not, because we haven't deleted it yet, right? So that's 42. Okay, so we've highlighted the whole thing. All right, so now I want to set a breakpoint when we backspace. And see what the heck is going on with that, right? So we'll bring this back up, and we'll hit backspace. So cursor position is greater than 0, and length is greater than 0. Okay, the range size is greater than 0. So string remove @, the offset of 0, and the size. Oh, I bet it's killing the 0 terminator too. Okay. So I think what we really need to do here is we probably just need to check to say, hey, do we have the whole thing actually highlighted when we backspace? And then instead of doing a remove @, we could probably just empty the string, right? So right? Because we could just do string. Right, we could literally just do that. So if type data highlight range size equals length, then we do that. Otherwise, we do that. Right? And I think that will probably give us what we need. And in fact, we can actually move this here, set type data cursor position to 0 here in this case, right? Because we're just clearing the entire string. And so that will likely solve that issue. We're going to need to do the same thing for backspace, or for delete rather, right? And so we can just do that, and that should give us what we need there. And then we need this string empty one more time at the bottom. Because we can also check that here. So we can say if type data highlight range size equals length, then we can do this. And then type data cursor position equals 0. Else. Right? So basically just do the same thing here at the bottom. Oh, you thought it was sweet instead of stretch? Can I ask, what are you doing exactly? So, what we're doing right now is implementing a Textbox from scratch, right? Oh, signed versus unsigned again. Rude. Okay. Let me just fix this real quick. So length is unsigned, so I can just do I32. And let's see. Let me just put this in here and then I'll fully explain what we're doing. Where was that? So key right, key left, backspace and delete. I think we're at the top. Yeah. So we need it here. And we need it where was it? Here. Oops. There. Okay, so what we're doing is we're actually implementing a custom UI system for the game engine that we're writing completely from scratch, right? And the control I'm working on right now is a Textbox control. And so I mean, we're very near the end of implementation on it for now, right? So we actually have, if you look right here, we actually have the ability to navigate this. We can scroll it back and forth, right, with overflowed text. We can actually select some things. We can backspace it, right? Whoops, breakpoint. We can backspace that to get rid of the text. We can type new, dang it. Should have killed my breakpoints first. Continue. We can, you know what? Let me relaunch because I think I screwed up what I was doing there. And I might have also broken something, so let's see. So if I press A here, oh, that killed the whole thing. Why did it do that? Okay. It really should have only done this if we had the whole thing selected, which we didn't. Oh, that's not even the right section of code, that's why. It should be this is what the problem is. So get the string length of the original string. So if the highlight size is equal to the length of that string, then we empty it. Set the cursor position to 0. Otherwise, we remove at and set the cursor position to the range offset. That should work just fine. Let me just build again. So yeah, basically what we're doing is we're just implementing a text control, right? So we are trying to finish that up right now, actually, and I'm over time, so I'm gonna have to end here in just a second. But I want to see if I can really get this to completion first, right? So I should be able to hit. Yeah, why is that killing the entire thing? What are we doing here? Okay, I guess I'm going to have to set a breakpoint and figure this out. All right, so if I go here and I think this is the problematic section of code here. I'm going to snooze ads. I press A. Highlight size is not greater than 0. Oh. Well, no, that makes sense. We should just be able to insert, right? We shouldn't need... Right, so we get the string length. How is the string length 0? How is that an empty string? Oh, right. Because we haven't actually... So these two assign into that string, but if we don't go into this, then we haven't actually copied the string. Okay. That's why. That's why. Okay, so, in this case, we basically just need to do a string copy. Destination is string, and then source is entry control text. Otherwise, we're dealing with an empty string, and that's why it's freaking out. Do you insert then empty, or empty then insert? I empty then insert. But if I didn't have a highlight at all, I was just allocating an empty string here, and there was no string copy happening. So that's what the problem was. So I'm actually going to kill this breakpoint and try again, so I can demo the thing that I was actually trying to demo. And so if I type, you know, letters here, they work. I can backspace them. I can delete them. I can highlight them, backspace, highlight them, delete, highlight them, jump left and right. I should now be able to say home and backspace and then start typing, and it works, right? And then I should be able to say home and delete. And it doesn't look like I have delete working. So I think that's literally just the same, going to be the same logic as I did for backspace. Code 0x, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Let's see. So if delete, let's see. So if the size is equal to length, then we empty the string. Yeah, this is exact same logic. Why did that not? Okay. So let's just break that real quick and see what we got. So backspace we know works. If length is greater than 0 and cursor position is less than length, that's the problem. It's not even hitting this code because of that. Because in this case, cursor position is equal to length. Right? So we don't really want to do a delete in most circumstances here. So I think the way to solve this is going to be to say if length is greater than 0. Wrap this whole thing, right? And then remove this. And take this section take this section. I really don't want to have to repeat all of this stuff. It's the part of the problem. So I'm going to say less than or equal to length. Which I suppose I could undo what I just did here, right? If length 0 or it should be length is greater than 0. So if we highlight the whole thing, then we're good. Otherwise, shoot, how do I want to handle this? You know what? I am going to put this back, and I'm just going to handle this case separately. So if it's equal to length, right? So basically, if it's equal to length, and this is also true. Then we're going to do this, right? And then we're also going to do this. We're also going to do this. So we clear the string, update the highlight box, set the text, update the position. Yes, we have some repetitive stuff in here, but it should work. Right, so select to the end, delete. Oh, stupid breakpoint. All right. Got rid of the text. I can do that. Home, select to the end. Backspace works. If I do Shift Home and delete, that should work. If I do Home, Shift End, delete, that should work. If I do Shift Home Backspace, that didn't work. Shift Home Backspace. That's an interesting corner case. Okay, so right, this is going to be kind of the same scenario. Ugh, that's really annoying to have to repeat all that code. Okay, I guess I really don't have to repeat all of this, right? Although the else block here should basically be a no-op. So I'll have to think about that, right? I'm gonna brute force it for now, and then I'll clean it up later. So do this. Wait a minute, would this... Did I just break deletes by removing that code out of here? I might have. Yeah, first sort of rule of coding. Get it working, then clean up. Yeah, exactly. However, it's pretty late. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit this as it stands now. Because I think I'm there, but I just get this feeling that I'm missing a couple of other things that I need to work out. So, I'm going to commit this now. Text box highlighting mostly complete. Need to figure out a few things around select all delete. Speaking of which, Control A should select all, so that's another thing I need to add. So yeah, I'm just not going to get to that tonight, and I've got to get up in the morning, and I'm already like half an hour over time. So I'm going to call the stream here. Thank you guys so much for following along and being here. I'm going to dump my socials here and Twitch chat. Those of you over on YouTube, just be sure to drop a subscribe on YouTube, and over on Twitch, if you guys could follow me, I would appreciate it greatly. And follow me in all the places and the things. I would greatly appreciate it. I appreciate you guys being here. And tonight, I'm going to raid Ferret Software because it's a ferret rescue that is basically powered by ad revenue alone, right? So just the stream running, you don't even have to throw bits at it or anything. Just the stream running is enough to actually power the rescue, right? And I think they're up to 17 ferrets right now. Ferrets are really expensive to take care of and maintain and keep healthy. And they take ferrets from near-death scenarios and rehabilitate them and bring them back to a healthy state. And I think it's a really good cause. And so I'm going to raid that channel for tonight. And yeah, that is going to do it for the stream tonight. So thank you guys for being here, and I will catch you guys on the next one. See ya.